Iron Man, the Golden Avenger. Tony Stark started as one of the less popular characters in the Marvel Universe and has become one of the #1 favorites in the eyes of many fans. But thanks to his more humble beginnings, he's got some interesting villains. I'm Adam Andrews with Top 10 Nerd, and this is the Top 10 Obscure Iron Man Villains. Let me know in the comments, what are your favorite Iron Man moments from the comics or the movies? Number 10, the Red Barbarian. What better sign of the times than having an increasingly stereotypically generic communist Russian general as a villain? At least they gave him a unique name. The Red Barbarian was a general in the USSR Army named Andrei Rostov, and along with his generic name, he was generically evil, wore generic medals on his generic brown fatigues, and drank a lot of very generic Russian party beverages. The Barbarian never really even engaged Stark directly. He mainly sent incredibly generic spies to go and steal some generic plans from the guy. And to just add to the icing on the cake, when the one interesting spy, the actor, managed to actually succeed in his mission, Andre didn't believe him and had taken him out. Andre did not believe him and had him taken out. He eventually just became another generic Russian guy taken out by the Winter Soldier. What a waste. Number 9, the Freak. Some of you may be surprised to learn that the Freak was actually Iron Man's best buddy, Happy Hogan. In some earlier Iron Man stories, Happy Hogan accidentally absorbs a large dose of cobalt radiation thanks to the Innervator. This made him several times more powerful, which I gotta let you know is not how that works. Please do not irradiate yourself for superpowers, it will not go well. Nevertheless, in this form, he could discharge blasts of cobalt energy from his hands, had superhuman durability and strength, even becoming bulletproof, and he continuously radiated lethal levels of radiation which could have resulted in a nuclear explosion. Unfortunately, he was also just cray with this power, turning him into the Freak. Iron Man chased him and managed to lure him to his factory, where he tricked him into walking into a maximum power burst of the Innervation intensifier, hoping it would turn him back to Happy Hogan, which it did. Number 8, the Unicorn. The Unicorn suffers from having probably the least threatening of names, and honestly, when he first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 56 in May of 1964, Milos Masaryk, which is how I'm hoping you pronounce that, was just a Soviet agent assigned to security duty for a bigger bad, Anton Vanko, who eventually became the Crimson Dynamo. Dynamo's second finished project was a helmet with radiation beam weaponry called a power horn. Vanko offered this invention to Masaryk and taught him how to use it. So yeah, the Unicorn was essentially another villain's lackey, but he did eventually get enhanced with superhuman strength and stamina, not to mention near impenetrable skin. He also eventually turned the helmet weaponry somehow into a third eye that can fire energy beams. It looked much cooler, I'll agree, but he was kinda crazy and he still kept on just being muscle for other villains, last of which would be Korvac. Number 7, Mr. Doll. Look, sometimes Marvel had to get really creative in their earlier days. They were still figuring out what worked and what didn't. I'm not saying that Mr. Doll, aka Nathan Dawley, who appeared in Tales of Suspense number 48 in 1963, didn't work. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying actually. Yeah. The concept is actually quite a familiar one, almost like it's been done before by another comic book company. Dwarf Dolly came into possession of what was essentially a voodoo doll that could be shaped into whoever he intended the victim to be, and he got really good at reshaping it, using the doll to inflict pain on businessmen until they handed over their companies to Dolly himself. He came into conflict with Iron Man, and he did actually defeat the hero the first time, but we all know that isn't going to last, and somehow Iron Man used an energy blast to make the doll resemble Nathan himself, and the villain's attack backfired. He then got his mind implanted into 2 mannequins who took themselves after the Brothers Grimm, and I don't think any of us were expecting that one. Not at all. Number 6, Gargantus. Gargantus was Iron Man's first real opponent after his origin story in number 39 of Tales of Suspense. For the follow-up, number 40, Marvel decided that his next adversary would be a gigantic robotic Neanderthal constructed by aliens who traveled to Earth 80,000 years ago. I guess the these Goomba-looking aliens saw Neanderthals and thought that would make an excellent robot. And for those nearly 80,000 years, they didn't change the robot one bit, because when two of those aliens came to Earth in the modern day, they brought the club-wielding Gargantus with them to lead the attack. Now, he did have mesmerizing abilities, which he used to force the citizens of Granville to build a wall around the city. Unfortunately though, for Gargantus, one of those citizens had a literal date with Tony Stark, and so he went to investigate, eventually defeating the robot with incredibly powerful magnets that ripped it apart. Number 5. Spymaster. While other obscure villains tread into the realm of ridiculous and hilarious, Ted Calloway, or Spymaster, is just plain awesome. He has actually been a thorn in the side of Tony Stark, breaking into Stark Tower multiple times. In one arc, he was the one who put together a team of other underutilized Iron Man rogues, including our buddy Unicorn, and breaking into Stark Tower, stealing some of Stark's tech. He was even able to steal tech for Justin Hammer, which was the spark for the awesome Armor Wars story arc. He has eluded capture multiple times and even let the world believe he was passed away while he continued to operate in the shadows. Despite first appearing in 1971, he's just kind of always remained relatively unknown to the common audience member, and I think that's gotta change. Number 4. Dreadknight. Bram Velsing, for starters, has an incredibly strange name that is a very obvious reference to Bram Stoker and his character Van Helsing. But he is also not actually an Iron Man villain, not on Earth 616 at least. Bram Velsing, or Dreadknight, is really an enemy to Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe. Unfortunately, in the 1610 universe, he just kind of becomes another Iron Man villain that creates an Iron Man-like armor. But in Earth 616, he is actually a Latvarian scientist who didn't like Dr. Doom's schemes and was punished by having a mask fused to his face. He became kind of like a villain to Dr. Doom in a way, allying himself with Victoria Frankenstein and the creations of Victor Frankenstein. He has fought Iron Man on a few occasions in 616 as well, but he's also fought Black Knight and Spider-Man. And I mean, an armored up man with a cool mask wielding a super cool lance riding a black winged horse? It's actually pretty cool. Number 3. Controller. I don't know what it is about Iron Man, but so many of his villains, even the obscure ones, are actually really neat. Granted, some are just dudes in suits, but what's cool is that for the most part they are other scientists or regular dudes who elevate themselves to something more. Controller is a prime example. Basil Sandhurst developed himself an exoskeleton to allow him to move and function after a terrible chemical accident. But with this tech, he also developed the ability to siphon and use the mental energy of others to control them and read their minds. Eventually, this technological ability became one he just possessed on his own, and it's caused him to go up against some real heavy hitters, including different iterations of Captain Marvel. But he will always hold a feud against Iron Man, Tony Stark, for all the times the Golden Avenger has defeated him. Number 2. Arsenal. Arsenal may actually be known to Iron Man readers. Originally, Arsenal was actually a creation of Howard Stark, Tony's father. It was a prototype robot weapon created by Howard during the Cold War. Now, there are actually two, Arsenal Alpha and Arsenal Beta, but we will mainly be talking about Beta. What makes this villain more imposing for Tony himself is the fact that Arsenal Beta's neural processors were based on Howard himself. Plus, he had a sophisticated guidance AI named Mistress, which was actually based on engrams of Tony's mother, Maria. Arsenal contains both Tony's mom and dad, huge influences in his life, making any battle with Arsenal a much more personal one. More recently, Howard and Maria, or Arsenal and Mistress, were both uploaded to Tony's Escape, and thanks to Arno Stark, they were even given human forms, but unfortunately they will never truly be Tony's parents. And in at number 1 is Madame Masque. Yes, I know she isn't really the most obscure, but she is cool as hell, and not everyone knows about Guiletta Nefaria. Nefaria, working under her father, Count Lucino Nefaria, became the leader of the massive Magia crime family, and in one of her first moments she actually attempted to infiltrate Stark Industries mysteries by charming Jasper Sitwell. Only, she actually ended up getting feelings for him and then got into an accident that disfigured her, which is when she got the golden mask that granted her the name Madame Masque. She has remained a villain to Iron Man for a long time, playing a bit more of a hands-on part, although behind the scenes in Dark Reign and Secret Invasion, which is where she developed a relationship with the villain, the Hood. She remained a decent level threat for a long time, even fighting Moon Knight and Hawkeye, and there was also a point where she acquired a number of magical artifacts that gave her actual power outside of the Magia. Thanks to her less than ideal relationships with Midas, Jasper Sitwell, Tony Stark, and her own father, plus her incredibly hard childhood and facial disfigurement, she is an incredibly compelling character with depth many other somewhat obscure villains just can't match. Alrighty, I hope you guys enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed talking. I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd. Peace out, nerds!